Hi, this is Ann V. Brady, and I will be talking some more about my book and why I wrote the book about social services uh, to and also adults not telling or adopted parents not telling their children that they're adopted until they're adults. Uh, my book is A New Beginning: The Story of My Adoption, Life, and Service. And I will start with the Department of Social Services and social workers. Now, while social workers do a wonderful job and they help place children in homes to be adopted or foster homes, and they're understaffed, I want to discuss about the fact that at least back when I was adopted, uh, social workers didn't always tell the adopted family that all the facts about the child they were adopting. And hopefully that has changed as we've gotten into the 21st century, and they no longer lie to people about adoptees, and not all do, and not all did back then. But what I want to discuss is the fact that when my mother and I talked, my mom and I talked about adoption, or when I was adopted, she told me several things. And the first one was she told me I had never been in a hospital in my life. When I got my non identifying file from social services, I noticed, as I discussed yesterday, that because I suffered from failure to thrive after I was born, they kept me in the hospital because they didn't want to put me in an orphanage. So they kept me in the hospital till I was a year old. Also, later on, at some point when I was at a foster home, I had been placed in the hospital because they thought I broke my leg. And turned out I didn't break my leg. But while I was in the hospital, I came down with hemorrhagic measles. And so they told my mother none of this. Okay. And I think it would have been important for her to know this, or for both my parents to know this. The other is that she was told by the social worker that my parents had died in a car accident. Well, according to my file, my mother was Helen Frances Pierce. She was single. She was born in 1919. I was born in 1954. So she was going on 35, 34 when I was born. And she gave me up for adoption. She also gave up my brother for adoption when she found out she was pregnant with me. And I don't know why they lied to her about this. Because I don't see, unless they thought that my parents wouldn't want to adopt an illegitimate child, why that should have a bearing on anything, I have no idea. But now I started searching in 1990, and I was 36. No, I was 34. And when I finally found out, well, I was searching for my birth mother, someone sent me what they thought was what was an obituary, or a small blurb about my mother dying. And in my file, I gathered that my mother was born October 18th, 1919. Well, she was from Somerville, Massachusetts, and what I found in the obituary was that it said she was born October 8th, 1919 in Somerville, Massachusetts. And the person said, I found this and I wanted to let you know, but hopefully it's not your birth mother. And I told her, I said, looking at it, having the same person, a person with the same name as my birth mother, born in Somerville, 10 days apart in the same year, it's got to be my mother. And that the social workers either misunderstood what her birth date was, or they just got it wrong, or they transcribed it wrong. I don't know. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was whether about adoptive parents and telling their children about the fact that they are adopted. And this refers to mostly those who were adopted at birth and maybe even up to 2 years, because I don't know if a 1 or 2 year old would remember being adopted because they're so young. I was adopted at 4. I lived with my parents for a trial period from 3.5 to 4. Then I was adopted. And I've always known I was adopted. But it's hard to tell a child that, well, you're adopted. Uh, and some parents may mean to tell them at some time, but each time they think about, well, he's too young, he or she is too young to understand it now, let's wait. And so as time passes, they keep putting it off and putting it off. Some parents never tell their children they're adopted, and when the parent dies, the child, now an adult, is going through the attic or their desk, finding papers, wills, and find out, find their their adoption decree with the important papers and the will, and they look at it and it's like, what? And they had no idea. There are others where the parent waits until they're a certain age, 18, 21. I belonged to a young adults group when I was in Williston Park, New York, where I was raised. Uh, and basically, he told me that he had been married before, he was now divorced, but he had told me that his parents told him the night before his wedding, he was 21 years old, they told him the night before he was getting married that you're not our child, we adopted you. And he said it really threw him off because he felt lied to, betrayed. He felt like he was living a lie because he knew none of this. Now, also, sometimes some people find out when they're younger, but not from the parents. They get into a fight with a cousin or an older sibling, and they're mad at the child, at the adoptee, and tell them, well, you're not even part of this family. You were adopted, like it's a slur. And they go to their parents and they find out, yes, they were adopted. But then there are also others that decide as adults to go ahead and do DNA testing to find out their ethnicity and things like that. And if another sibling or someone else in the family, cousin or whatever, has done their DNA, and they go in there and they find out that their DNA doesn't match anybody from their family's DNA. And so it's quite a shock to them that, and then they find out that they're related to somebody with a totally different name that's not in their family as far as I know. And it's like, who is this? And, and it may come out that it says they're like such and such percent mother, father, mother or father, mother, son, mother, daughter, father, daughter. And so they're quite confused. There's there have been many instances where people in adoptee chat groups who have who are searching for birth family have found out that way, and some of them feel lied to and betrayed. Others or say they're relieved, and the reason they're relieved is because, say, they have dark hair, brown eyes, and what I would call olive skin, where they're a little bit darker than the rest of the family. Family is as pale as I am, green eyes, blue eyes, red hair, or blonde, and they look nothing like the rest of the family. And so they've always wondered, you know, what's going on here? Why don't I look like everybody else? And that explains to them why. And it makes them feel better because they don't feel like such an oddity, that they're different than everyone else. There's an explanation for it. One of the other things is, I remember a story from one person who said she had two sisters, and she and her two sisters decided they were going to get DNA testing. And so she said that she wanted to get DNA testing too. Her mother says, "Oh, no, 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 no. You don't need to get DNA testing because they're getting DNA tested and yours will be the same." And she thought about it, and she thought something was off about it because of the fact that if that were true, then she would have told, well, only one of her sisters needed to get DNA testing because all of you would be all the same. And she would object to two or more rather than just three getting DNA testing. And so she went ahead and got the DNA testing and discovered, yes, she was related to her mother, but her father that she grew up with was not her father. Her mother had an affair, and was hiding it. But there are so many wild and different stories, and there are a lot of people who never find out that they're adopted. And so there's no really way to know how many people in this country are actually adopted, because there are probably lots of people. I don't know if there are more that don't know or more that know that they're adopted, but there are probably lots of thousands of people who may be adopted and don't know and may never find out. Now, some adoptees decide not to search because they have a warm and loving adoptive family and they don't feel a need. And they're not curious at all. They don't care who their birth parents were. Now, occasionally they may go ahead and change their mind later on if a health issue comes up and doctors can't figure out what it is and need medical history. And that could change their mind. Some adoptees don't care until they have a family and then they want to know. Uh, so there are myriad reasons that adoptees search or don't search, or some search and they're afraid to contact the family that may be their birth family because they're afraid of getting rejected, because they feel, well, I was given up once. What if I contact this person and they either deny that they're the mother, even though there's irrefutable proof that they are your mother, or they may be a cousin who's a close cousin and knows who the birth mother is but doesn't want to say. Uh, so they're worried about they have a fear of rejection. And, some people want to find their birth family because they want a relationship, or because maybe being adopted, they didn't have a loving family, but they hope that the birth family will give them something they missed with the adoptive family. That doesn't always happen. Uh, but oh, so anyway, I appreciate the telling me hi. I hope you had a great weekend. Uh, the other thing I wanted to talk about was some people have who adopt don't want to adopt older children because they feel like they're tainted. And I've heard this in different, when reporters talk to somebody about and they ask their opinions on stuff like this, and they want babies because they're supposed to be pure, untouched. They aren't harmed by, you know, poor raising, being abused, you know, or anything like that. And they figure that, adopting an older child, you know, will cause problems. And sometimes that may be true. But, there are babies that are born addicted to drugs because the parents used or whatever, or drank a lot, so babies will sometimes have problems that you can't see because you don't want to see them. You assume that, it's a clean slate, is what I've been told. That the older children are tainted. And what I would like to say is, there's always a shortage, seems to be a shortage of babies, for people to adopt, especially white babies. And maybe if you're looking to adopt a child, you don't have to necessarily adopt a teenager or something like that, but adopting an older child will do a lot for them and for you, because they can give you love, uh, just like a newborn baby can. And of course, parents may also be worried that if they adopt an older child, eventually they will look for their birth parents and decide that, well, you tell the adoptive parent, well, you're not my real parents. And that has happened. I've seen posts about that too. But the thing is, whether you're adopted as a child and then find out that you're adopted, or an older child, you have the right to decide to search when you reach the age that you can search legally in whatever state that you were born in or adopted in. And the reason I make that distinction is the fact that sometimes a child may be born in one state, and if the parent of the mother, say she's 13, 14, 16 years old, and the child is illegitimate, may decide that they don't want the stigma, so they send the child to a mother's home in another state, or if they make sure that they deliver the child in another state. And so, like, say they're born in Missouri and they send them to Illinois or New Hampshire or whatever. And so, just because you're born in this one state doesn't mean, you know, that's where you start your search. But you may find out that your mother was actually from here and that's where she got pregnant. And it makes the search harder. And that's the whole idea between a lot of these regulations. They say they're for privacy concerns for the birth mother. And I don't necessarily believe that because they could discuss with the mother after the child is born and she gives it up whether if someone searches for her whether they want to be found or not, and she could tell them at that time. But or and she could have because sometimes the birth mother actually wants to search for her child because either they were forced to give up the child or didn't know that, you know, now others are ashamed of the fact that they got pregnant because they're ashamed by their family and don't want anyone, especially if they've remarried and had other children with their husband, and the family that she's married into may not know that she's adopted, and she doesn't want to be contacted, and she will fight you tooth and nail because she's been told all her life what a disgrace and what a shame and embarrassment. Especially when you're talking about a time back in the 50s, 40s, 30s. An unwed mother, she was either crazy or, irresponsible. And she was the one that bore the brunt of the shame, not the man that got her pregnant. I mean, it takes two to tango. But I just wanted to say that this is the end right here for today, anyway. And I'm signing off today, and I hope everybody had a great weekend. Please have a great week. And thank you for joining me. And I'll talk to you later.